It's Sunday, October 26th, and a truly worst case scenario is currently unfolding for a large chunk of the Caribbean, specifically in Jamaica. I think that's going to be the hardest hit place by this huge monster storm that is Melissa, and also parts of southwestern Haiti and then southeastern Cuba as well. Now, currently on the most recent satellite scans, we can see that Melissa is starting to develop an eye. This is a little bit earlier than expected, definitely defines some expectations with a lot of shear in the area, which is a little unfavorable for development, but this is a little concerning for a couple of reasons. First is that the sooner Melissa really opens up that eye, the sooner it's going to be able to strengthen and the longer it's going to be able to cook in those waters with its center closed off, just really being able to deepen down into a category 4 and potentially even category 5 hurricane. I definitely think that is going to be on the table with how early this eye is opening up. And overall, this storm just could not look more organized right now. There is so much deep convection around the center, and even the outer bands are looking pretty solid as well. And to just give a quick idea on how fast Melissa is truly intensifying, in the past 12 hours, it has gone from just a category 2 hurricane to already a major category 3 hurricane. And as that eye gets closed off, we are going to start to see drops as quick as 5 millibars every 30 minutes. This is currently the aircraft recon mission being flown by the hurricane hunters, and every single pass we're consistently seeing a drop in millibars. And another thing to point out is that that drop in millibars is getting greater every pass. So not only is it strengthening, but it's starting to strengthen at a quicker and quicker rate. This is definitely meaning that explosive intensification is either ongoing or is about to start. And although there really is no good news at all with Melissa, I guess there is a little speck of something which I guess could be considered good. A lot of our hurricane models and also the track of Melissa, I think the HAFS models have been about as bang on as any other model currently right now for Melissa, are showing that it's going to track a little bit more south of Jamaica before it turns up and makes a direct landfall into the country. Now, this means that the coast is not going to be constantly getting battered by the eye wall for days. That was a concern, but now it looks like it's just going to be tropical storm winds all the way up until that landfall, when that eye wall does, of course, interact with the island, where I do think we could potentially see category 5 winds even with that storm. I definitely think it has a chance to get that strong. That would be for winds in that 160 mile an hour sustained region and gusting in 200. So I guess this is something that could be viewed as something that's good, but it's really just a terrible situation unfolding right now. Like I said, it's almost a worst case scenario. Of course, we're going to have those monster winds, a monster storm surge. I definitely think a storm surge in the 10 to 15 foot range is definitely going to be almost likely. With this storm, the wave heights are going to be massive, likely in excess of 40 feet. Definitely some coastal erosion going on, and then just damage from those waves as well on the coast. But what I think could actually be the biggest impact to the island is going to be the rainfall brought by Melissa. And this is the most updated rainfall outlook brought by Melissa, and we can see in parts of southwestern Haiti, southeastern Jamaica, and even probabilities are increasing for southeastern Cuba. I only think we're going to continue to see that increase. The National Hurricane Center has now issued an area which they believe that we could see up to 40 inches of rainfall. I would also say that we could see anywhere between 40 to even the high 60s in inches of rainfall. Now, unfortunately, Jamaica and a lot of these Caribbean islands have a more mountainous terrain, especially Jamaica. This means that we're going to be seeing tons of landslides. If you remember anything from Hurricane Helene and what landslides can do, that is definitely something that could be happening in Jamaica as the storm passes through and just dumps an absolute insane amount, almost a unfathomable amount of rain in the area in a couple of days. So that is actually what I think could be the biggest impact from this storm. Now, we've been talking a lot about Jamaica and the immediate surroundings and parts of southwestern Haiti and even southeastern Cuba. We know that the storm is going to impact pretty much all of these areas really hard. But looking a little bit more downstream, it looks like we could see some impacts in the Bahamas even. Luckily, after it goes through the mountainous terrain of Cuba, really interacts with that mountainous terrain there. It looks like it's going to weaken down to hurricane strength. Still, probably a strong hurricane, bringing all of those threats: storm surge, high winds, and flooding. So, definitely to the Bahamas, and even further downstream, it looks like Bermuda could even be seeing some possible impacts from that storm. But that's really far out, but definitely, even after this storm goes through the Caribbean, it's important to remember that it is not going to be over yet. Now, we've been talking a lot about Melissa, its current presentation, and the impacts it will bring, and even where it will go. But now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about why this is happening, why it's strengthening so much. Now, first, we're going to be taking a peek at the deep layer shear in the region, and actually, it's not that favorable. Anything in the red is going to be unfavorable, and Melissa is going to be right about here, and we can see that it's constantly kind of been sitting in some unfavorable shear as it has been able to develop. And this is actually one of the reasons why it's been slower to develop the past couple of days, but it's a little surprising now that it's kind of deepening down that we're being able to see this much strengthening, even though the shear is not very favorable. So this just kind of shows how unstoppable this storm is and how strong it truly is. I definitely think it helps that the storm is closing off its center, and it's kind of going to be more resilient to this. So I think it will only continue to strengthen. And this was really only the only fail mode for Melissa strengthening. So now that this is kind of shown to really be a bit of a non-factor, that's definitely a little bit concerning. And I definitely think Melissa will make a push towards a category 5. Now, one of the reasons why Melissa has been able to overcome this pretty unfavorable shear is going to be the sea surface temperatures first and foremost. All of them in this area are over 30 degrees Celsius. That's rounds to about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And I also think the sea surface temperatures are probably a little bit closer to 90 degrees Fahrenheit in this area. Some of the hottest sea surface temperatures in the world. And of course, that is going to be the main thing that fuels tropical systems and thus Melissa. Now, even on the moisture front, it's been kind of siphoning a lot of moisture from parts of South America, even parts of the Pacific as well. But as it closes off its center, it's going to be a lot more resilient to the dry air, kind of swooping down from this passing dip in our jet stream up here. So that also looks like it's going to be a non-factor, also allowing Melissa to only strengthen further. Now, switching gears from Major Hurricane Melissa, we have a couple of stuff happening on the mainland United States. First and foremost is going to be this marginal risk of severe weather in the far southeastern Gulf Coast of the U.S., affecting areas like Pensacola, New Orleans, and Mobile, Alabama. Now, I think the main risk with this is, of course, going to be that damaging wind threat, maybe some gust in excess of 60 miles an hour. Definitely think that's going to be in play. And then we also have a tornado threat, which encompasses the same area. Don't really think we're going to see a threat for anything more than a couple of weak, short-lived spin-up tornadoes, though then that hail threat is going to be essentially zero. And this is how it looks like it's going to unfold today. First and foremost, we're going to have kind of that line of storms is just going to persist from this big system that's been pushing through. Of course, we're going to have that low pressure center a little bit more north, a cold front behind this. And then the main thing is that we have a really strong band of confluence and then also just loads of that warm, moist air from the Gulf flowing directly into this. That is why these storms are actually expected to be a little bit more stronger in the more southern portion of this line also. Now, one of the things that we could see is that as we move a little bit more further into the day, this band of confluence is really going to ramp up here, really feeling these storms at the forefront of this. I think in the afternoon, some of the more harder hit areas are actually going to be portions of far southern Alabama, so maybe even Mobile. On this, the HRRR is predicting we have a pretty formidable cell going through, definitely bringing that threat of maybe a spin-up tornado, some damaging winds. And then also as we go into the night tonight, I actually think we could see severe weather persist, damaging winds, maybe a threat for a spin-up tornado or two, all the way until we get to around the Big Bend region of Florida. By then, the sun will be rising on Monday. So I think this will still be a pretty formidable system for the third day in a row. Now, luckily, it looks like this system is going to be done after today, so we won't really have to worry about it, but still not out of the woods yet. Still want to be aware for those severe warnings, mostly for damaging winds and maybe even a couple of stray tornado warnings for a couple of short-lived spin-ups on this cold front and big weather complex that has just been pushing through. Now, one more thing I want to mention, I've been focusing a lot more on the coastal region because, of course, I think that's where the majority of the severe weather is going to be. But even if you're in parts a little bit more north, in parts of Mississippi and Alabama, it looks like you're going to be getting some pretty strong weather too. Now, likely these won't be severe up here, stretching all the way even towards the Memphis region. I don't really think they'll be severe, but I definitely think this will be a somewhat strong line of storms. I definitely think you will be seeing some gusty winds, thunderstorms. Not really much of a tornado threat though, but definitely want to be aware for some nasty weather. And real quick, this is just what the jet stream looks like pushing through. This is, of course, going to be the main contributor to our severe weather. Of course, we have that low pressure center moving from parts of Oklahoma into Arkansas and then Tennessee as well. And then just this area of flow, just bringing some forcing for our storms enough to get them going. And I also want to take a peek back at this big, strong jet max in parts of the Pacific Northwest or just the West in general. This is going to move inland over the next couple of days, bringing just some general thunderstorms. And I think this is going to be the next big causer of severe weather, potentially even starting on Tuesday and Wednesday this week. So definitely want to look for that as we go into the future. And this is a deep dive on the ingredients in our main severe weather today area. I definitely think there is going to be the threat of a couple of spin up tornadoes. We have a very nice looking curvature in our photograph. Also, our low level LSD and low level shear is expected to be just exceptional for that threat of spin up tornadoes. Our cloud base is going to be absolutely low enough for that to happen. Also have some wind varying. Now, the main hindrance here is going to be that there's not really a whole lot of stability going on, and our low level lapse rate is looking very unfavorable for that risk. So it's really going to be carried entirely by our super favorable shear. Our bulk shear is also going to be pretty favorable as well. Almost undoubtable that we'll see a couple of organized storms, but because the atmosphere has a pretty stable profile in the first 3 kilometers, our lapse rates aren't really that high. Not a whole lot of instability here. Definitely think we have enough for thunderstorms, just don't know if we'll see enough for a tornado threat to unfold. Also, our precipitable water is going to be 1.57. Looks like it's just going to be a lot of messy, outflowy storms today. I definitely think because our shear parameters are so good, that threat of a couple of spin-up tornadoes will uphold. I just think it's a little iffy because our atmosphere is going to be so stable near the surface. So definitely, main thing is going to be damaging winds. Be on the lookout for that if you're in that marginal risk area, but also do not be surprised to see a tornado warning or two associated with that same storm system.